Hey, welcome to the Diabetes Remission Roadmap podcast with the two renegade pharmacists, Brian Bisher and Cory Jenks. You are listening to this because you are a person with type 2 diabetes who is committed and driven to breaking free from this diagnosis and creating a real, meaningful change in your health and life. In these episodes, we're here to help you ditch the scripts with doses of unconventional wisdom on topics such as fitness, nutrition, medication, mindset, and more. So without any further delay, let's dive right in. All right, welcome back to the Diabetes Remission Roadmap podcast, where we are going to fulfill our promise on talking about how do you actually get remission? What are the steps, Cory? That's what we're going to break down today, right?
We are going to break down. And if you've not listened to what is diabetes, go back to episode 3. You'll get a nice brief overview from us. But today we're going to get into how we can start putting type 2 diabetes in remission. And if you did not remember, we are two pharmacists. So we were trained that when your blood sugar is high, we will manage this by giving you medicines. And I promise, we will do a deep dive on the medicines that we can use for diabetes and then why we hate them all and why we want to get you off them. But today we're going to give you basically 3 basic things that you can do to help start putting your type 2 diabetes in remission. And you might be thinking 3 things. That's like insultingly simple. And it is. I didn't say 3 easy things, Brian. I said 3 things. So if you recall, type 2 diabetes really becomes an issue of insulin resistance. Insulin being the hormone that takes the sugar from your blood and stores it. Well, in type 2 diabetes, you're resistant to this insulin because your storage tanks are basically overfull. And so sugar starts spilling into your blood. Then you go to your doctor and you're diagnosed with diabetes. And if your sugar's really high, you're going to be having symptoms of high sugar. So thirsty, hungry, peeing all the time. But that's usually not until things are real bad. So,
Yeah.
But 3 things. So we've used the metaphor storage tank several times, Brian, many times. So if we're talking about storing sugar and you're out of storage, well, what's the first thing we can do about our storage tank? I had alluded to the fact that the last episode where how we store sugar it's called glycogen, and we stored it in muscle. And when you run out of room in your muscle, it goes around your liver, which is bad. You do not want fat around your liver. So we can talk more about visceral fat in another episode too. Send us comments too. Tell us what you want to hear. But we have so many topics to cover. Type 2 diabetes can be very simple and very complex. So we want to build a bigger storage tank. And now we're not going to build a bigger liver. So what can we build bigger, Brian? As I see your biceps bulging through your short shirt. That's a bit of a hint.
We are going to focus on building bigger muscles. That is the sink, right? They're the tank where you can put your excess sugar. And so the best way to build bigger muscles is through strength and resistance training, which is, I think, mentioned in the diabetes care standard of care somewhere, but it's not really applied, I would say, because doctors don't really know how to teach their patients how to build bigger muscle. And one thing I wish doctors would start doing is talking to their patients about muscle health, the importance of it, and just empowering them with the knowledge to really understand why they should be doing some kind of strength training or resistance training. Because I'll talk to people and they're like, oh, exercise, yeah, not that. I don't want to get into that. The doctor, they'll tell you that, maybe they'll print it at the bottom of your AVS, 30 minutes of exercise.
AVS being an
Yes.
after visit
Gosh.
survey, or after visit summary, Brian.
Yes. Okay. So you'll probably see some maybe in this long instructions, if your doctor even took the time to give a pre-made instruction, they just put out everybody's notes, so it's not even personalized. But at the end of it, if your doctor took that time, you'll probably see in there 30 minutes 5 times a week. So is that what everybody should be doing, Cory? 30 minutes 5 times a week?
You can do way less.
Yeah.
That's some good news. I got great news for you. If you were like, I hate the idea of going to a gym, I do not want to spend a lot of time lifting weights, then honestly, we could get you there in 15 minutes twice a week. It's the minimum effective dose that we have found for strength training. And if you are saying I hate the idea of lifting weights, I'm sorry. This is unfortunately non-negotiable. We have to build a bigger tank. If you want remission, if you want management, we have a list of expensive drugs that we can give you. But the crucial thing is that every path you choose with diabetes kind of sucks. in a way. Now, I mean, we love working out, so for us, lifting weights is not does not suck. Although every time I get on that pull-up bar, I dread it. So if it makes you feel better, I don't look forward to the hard work sometimes. But it's incredible what 15 minutes twice a week of a very focused strength training program can do because you're going to build a bigger tank. So when you have sugar in your blood, there's going to be more place for it to go. That's as simple as we can put it, Brian.
And on top of that, you're going to improve the health of your current tank. So muscle itself gets fat stored in it, and you're going to start leaning it out. Think of it like I want to have flank steak. If you've seen flank steak at the store, it's much leaner. If you look at what you currently have, it probably resembles more of the marble based, like
We've got a
New
lot of
York's.
ribeyes out there.
Yeah, a lot of ribeyes. So too much fat. And when there's too much fat in the muscle, that is blocking, again, the signals your body needs to get from insulin to store it as glycogen. And that's what just working out in general will do. It is harder to put muscle on. I think we say build a bigger tank. Ideally, we want to first start with like improving the health of your current tank because it's all globbed up and it's not really able to store it properly. Just think of it, it's like it's just really globbed up with fat.
Well, that using that very medical term, globbed up, Brian, all this is to say, start strength training,
Yes.
and that's step one is in building that bigger, we'll say a bigger, healthier tank. Because a quick aside, oftentimes type 2 diabetes is associated with being overweight or obese. But if you look at a lot of the cultures that are struggling with type 2 diabetes in Asia or India, you don't see a lot of morbid obesity like here in America. But what you also don't see, you see like maybe a little bit of stomach fat. But what you don't see is a lot of muscle. You see very skinny arms and legs because there's no muscle on folks. So regardless of your ethnic background, like building more muscle is going to help with building that bigger tank. So that would be step one is building a bigger tank. Step two is you have the sugar in your blood. Maybe there's too much of it. That's your fuel. It can be fuel for your body. Sugar or fat can fuel your body. But in this case, we have too much sugar in the blood. So we're trying to build a bigger tank. Next thing we can do is burn the fuel we have. So how do we do that, Brian? How can we burn the excess fuel in our bloodstream?
You got legs, you can walk. So walking is seriously the simplest form of exercise. It's the most accessible. And I always tell people that I'm seeing them, if they're struggling to walk, they're like their feet hurt, get a foot pedal. You don't need to go on long walks outside, although that's great. You get some sunshine, improve your mood, and make everything else better in your life. You can start simply by walking in front of a TV during commercials. You can use a foot pedal to just sit down and just get your legs moving again, build up strength.
Yeah, I think that if you are listening to this and you have not been doing any sort of cardio activity, this is what we're looking at. And you've not been doing any of that. Starting very simply with short walks is a great way to go. One of the my favorite thing that I tell people that I take care of is I live in Tucson, Arizona. So for like 10 months a year, everyone's like, it's too hot. And then for 2 months a year, they're like, it's too cold to go outside. And so I ask them, do you watch TV? And oftentimes they're like, yeah, hours of it a day. Well, get up and walk in place during the commercials. And then I see their brains break from the cognitive dissonance of like, oh, you got me. I can do that. Because the truth is, like, even if you just do maybe 2 or 5 minutes before or after you eat, 3 times a day, from doing nothing, you're going to see an improvement.
Yeah.
And if because also if you go to that doctor, they're going to say do 150 minutes of cardio activity a week. Well, if you've been doing none and then you start getting on a treadmill or running, you're going to get hurt. If you've been doing nothing, get going and walking is a great way to go. And if between you and me, Brian, like you and I do a lot of just walking.
Yeah.
I will run a couple times a week to torture myself, and because I think it's important once you hit a certain level of cardio fitness. But for those of you just starting out, just doing some simple walking can go a long way. I mean, I've had patients go from A1Cs of 14 and they've dropped 5% in 2 or 3 months. The only cardio activity they're doing is literally walking in front of the TV. I've had patients drop their insulin walking during the like NCIS commercials. I remember this one patient who was like, "Do you like watching TV?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What's your favorite show?" She's like, "NCIS." I'm like, "Oh, great. Well, there's like 15 minutes of commercials during an hour-long show, so walk in place." And in a month, we've dropped her insulin in double digits. So it's if you're listening to this, you're like, but there's so much complex medicines and information and recommend there sure is. And the good old fashioned like moving a little bit more can go a long way.
Yeah, a couple things to add to this, Corey, because I think you're pointing out really important thing here that what are the commercials? They're nothing but a trigger, a reminder for people to do this.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You need to build these habits. You need to make them super simple, very easy to do, and make them so that you remember them. And having that commercial is like a trigger. It's like, oh, the commercial's on, so I gotta get up and walk. Because oftentimes people just they forget, they get caught up in their day, they're busy, and they don't go for walks. It doesn't have to be long 20, 30-minute walks. It could be something as simple as a 2-minute break during a commercial where you're just moving your body more. And what that does is it really just allows your body to like your muscles to take up that sugar from your blood and use it for energy without even having to use insulin. So if you're insulin resistant, that's great. Your muscles are using it anyway. The other just side benefit to moving more, I will say personally, I experienced when my steps were drastically reduced during the pandemic, is I found myself getting a lot more anxious and depressed. And what do you do when you're anxious and depressed? I
You
think
eat your
you,
feelings.
yeah, you eat your feelings. So you get a little side ripple effect bonus of improving your mood. You're feeling better. All right, I don't need that cookie. I don't need to snack on something to make me not feel as good, right?
Mhm.
So you get that side benefit from just moving more, you burning up the extra fuel. So what's step number three, Corey?
All right, so we've built the bigger tank. We're burning the fuel that's in the body. Step three, stop overloading your tank. It's about what you're putting in your body. If you're listening to this and hoping that we wouldn't talk about what you're eating, I'm sorry, but this is part of it. And so, diet can be very contentious, and I like to make things as simple as possible because I'm a simple man with simple pleasures. And Brian, I know you're simple too. But on looking at what we're putting in our body, like here's what I tell people I take care of is when you put sugar in, sugar will go up. So the first thing we want to look at is reducing the amount of sugar you're putting into the body. Because if you look at the average sugar consumption in America, it is a statistic that I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's very high. So if we are putting less sugar in, less sugar will go up. And as we mentioned before, we have a medicine that will literally make you pee sugar out. So what if we just skip that step of where we're peeing the sugar out and just put less sugar in? And so this is going to be any sort of, I mean, the low-hanging fruit is going to be anything that you're drinking that's sweet. So soda, juices, your sports drinks that have sugar, like that is the number one napalm for blood sugar is if you're drinking it. Because for us taking care of people who take insulin, sometimes you can get a low sugar, and the treatment for low sugar is drinking a soda or juice. So you're literally drinking the thing that's designed to bring your sugar up. So stop that. Of course, any sugar added foods, this is your sweets, your whole sweets section. And then if your sugar's high and you're serious about this, and Brian and I might have a little disagreement here, but carbohydrates is the number one source of sugar when that isn't plain sugar, if that makes sense. So carbs, you have three macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. Carbs, when you eat them, are broken down into glucose. So the less carbs you put in, the lower your sugar is going to be. Now, does this mean you never eat a potato again? Does it mean you're never going to have a cookie again? Well, it depends. There are people who do that and they are very successful. But if that seems like it's unsustainable for you, there are some strategies we can work in. But we got to put less energy in the tank, Brian.
I agree. I agree. You have to control that, but I think there's a side reason for controlling that. And yes, you can get better numbers right away, but the point of getting the better numbers and controlling the roller coaster, I like to sit to tell people about, like you're going up and down. That does not feel good. So if you're constantly going up and down, your blood sugar is fluctuating, you are just going to feel drained, you're going to feel like crap, and you're not going to have the energy to get up and move or exercise, right? So this all needs to tie together where you are able to do the walking, do the movement, do the exercising 15 minutes twice a week, like Corey talked about, and you will then start to address the real problem, building a bigger tank and have more tolerance for the carbs and everything in the future. And you can also, like Corey said, walk around a meal, and that drastically lowers your blood sugar too. So you can still, in I would say giving up carbs altogether and cutting them out, sweets, is not a realistic strategy. I've talked to people, they're like, I cut out all carbs, all sweets. And I think that is not the right way to do it because what you do to get this result, you should be able to sustain. So if you give up something completely, I just fear people are not going to be able to sustain this. And I'm all about sustainability. So
Mhm. And I think so. This is probably another episode we can go into. I think there are a couple kinds of people, and I'm gonna steal something from a author, Gretchen Rubin. There's moderators and there are abstainers. So some people, if they have a little bit of, and I mean this could be another discussion is how addictive our food is. But if you have some people, if they have a cookie, they're going to binge on sweets for a week, 2 weeks, a month, and it will totally throw them off track. Some people are able to have a small amount of a sweet or chips or something, and it does not throw them off. Um, we can have maybe this will be a heated debate we could have in another episode, but I think that if you are first starting off and looking for remission, the the longer you can abstain from some of these foods, it's not just a blood sugar issue, it's also a sort of habits issue. There's a real reality of food addiction as well. So to break that dependence on sugar, to break that dependence on carbs, if you're able to go a week, 2 weeks, a month without eating it, then your sort of wiring and taste buds can change. You will find that certain things that used to not taste sweet will taste sweet. Um, and there are people that have sustained not eating sugar and carbs for the most part for years.
yeah.
Like it's true. So it's all about figuring out what works for you. And the thing that is not going to happen in your 7 minute primary care appointment with your doctor is figuring this out. That is where working with someone who's able to do this in a more in-depth way, identify your wants, things you like. Food's a part of our culture. It's part of celebrations. And for me, I live in the in Tucson, Arizona. There's a large Hispanic population that tortillas, tamales are a part of their cultural food, and it's not that has caused this diabetes. It's all of our Americanized crap over the years on top of what they're eating. So the lower carb debate we can certainly have. I hope you appreciate listening to this, that we don't agree on 100% of everything. I tend to err more on the lower carb side as an intervention, at least short term. And then
Yeah.
longer term, as you build the tolerance in your body with steps 1 and 2, you're able to incorporate more of those things depending on sort of your mental wiring. And as I said, if you are able to build a bigger tank and build more tolerance for sugar and carbs as you go down the road, great, and you're able to stay on track. And for some people, and I know this, I know myself with certain foods. This is why we keep the peanut butter hidden in the house. Like you're just going to eat the whole thing, or you're going to binge on it for a week. So that's the food addiction part of this is a whole nother discussion. But I think that if you are in a metabolic type 2 diabetes emergency with high sugars, I would like that third step, stop putting it in the tank is, or stop consuming it, limiting those foods that raise your sugar as much as possible in the short term, and then looking at a sustainable way to eat later on. And Brian, so putting less energy in the tank, that's one thing. And then what should you be eating? Like what is going to help with stabilizing those sugars? Because it's easy to say don't eat this, but then what do you eat?
Great question. So first, maybe we should even just say moving this to step one, right? Because if you just clear out the tank, like stop if you're being poisoned by sugar and carbs, then just stop putting it in the system as much and focus more on the lean proteins, the non-starchy vegetables. Those are the things, if you eat those, they should have a less impact on your blood sugar. Specifically, protein is going to fill you up more, and the vegetables are going to have the fiber, they're going to fill you up more. And all of this ultimately helps result in what we really want to do and what really addresses and fixes the problem is re putting yourself in a calorie deficit and losing excess body fat or visceral fat. So that's the most important part truly is reducing body fat in addition to building that bigger tank and burning off some extra sugar. You ultimately want to lose body fat so your body can restore this function on its own.
Yeah, you're going to have to restrict something to
Yeah.
lower that what's going in the tank. And the 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 two dietary patterns that are most studied for this are going to be a lower carb or a lower or carb restriction or calorie restriction. And you're going to have to figure out your preference. We can have a heated debate on that maybe in a future episode. Let us know if you want to see Brian and I scream at each other. And it's not like we disagree. Like I have patients that use low calorie and it works for them. I have patients that do low carb and it works for them. I you could look at the data and make an argument that in someone who's insulin resistant, lower carb is probably going to have a little bit more efficacy in data. But and then we could talk about fasting in another episode too. Like there's all these ways to lower the energy in. Um, and there's not enough time in our short episodes here to go into all that nuance. But knowing that the broad strokes, right? And I'll Brian wants to say something, but
Well,
I'm gonna cut him off, and then he can respond to this. So the three things that I like to tell people I'm taking care of, three dietary pillars. Start with what I want you eating. So one is protein. It's satiating. It won't raise your sugars. It's going to help with muscle building. Two, fibrous vegetables, because we want to help keep you fuller longer with the least amount of caloric energy coming in. So broccoli, lettuce, whatever vegetable you like. And then the third one is that limiting your sugars and excess carbs, because those three pillars are going to help maintain your satiety. They're going to help with not raising your sugar. They're going to help with stabilizing your sugar, and they're going to help with building that bigger tank as you incorporate your exercise and your strength training.
yeah, I think it's important to note that raising your sugar up quickly and then dropping it quickly stimulates hunger and appetite. So
Mhm.
it's going to further drive that problem of excess energy, too many calories, which is what I think you didn't even mention fat, Corey. I would throw in some healthy fat in there. Like avocados are great, olive oil, those healthy fats are a good way.
The fat that comes along with the protein you're eating, the steak, the chicken, the hamburger, cottage cheese, sugar-free yogurt, all of these have fat that goes along with it that isn't added. That's going to help with your satiety as well. Very good point, Brian.
Yeah. But ultimately, if you eat too much fat, so if you're just like Corey, maybe your peanut butter has very little carbs, and I'm like, I'm just gonna eat all this.
I mean, there's a decent amount of that's not a great cheese. We'll go
Okay,
cheese.
cheese. Okay, cheese. So you're eating a bunch of cheese, and you're like, my blood sugars are staying stable. But then next thing you know, you're like, you go to a party, and you have a cupcake, and boom, like your blood sugar skyrockets. It's like because you're not addressing if you're not losing weight, then you're not truly fixing the problem. So it is still important to put yourself in a calorie deficit, and fat packs a bunch of calories. So truly, you got to lose weight. And people always lose weight when they go low carb because what are they doing? They're peeing out a bunch of water. You're like, oh, I go keto and I lost so much weight. But a lot of that is just water stored. Like your glycogen is emptying out, so your muscles don't have as much glycogen. Glycogen holds on to a bunch of water, and so you just pee out a bunch of water. But unless you get into a calorie deficit, you are not going to be losing body fat, and that is what we ultimately want you to lose to start this healing process. So I think that's just an important thing to people to help differentiate between weight loss and fat loss. Would you agree, Corey?
Yeah, yes, but
Yes,
I
but
will say that again, if we're looking at dietary patterns that will have a lot of evidence in type 2 diabetes, a low carb and keto diet is doable. And I think I'm going to make a note. We're going to do the pitfalls of keto because there's ways of doing it well that is sustainable. That weight loss is actually fat loss, Brian.
I know.
You like this is, and I hope you appreciate that we have somewhat differing opinions. And there's many roads to remission. That's what we're here to talk about is the many roads. But I think the broad strokes are there. And so the three things you got to do, we're gonna before we start screaming at each other through here. Three things: build a bigger tank through strength training, burn off more of it through cardio activity, which is as simple as walking, and then put less in the tank, which is limiting sugars and carbs. And then I'll throw this in there: excess added fats, which is essentially going to be all of the added fats in like processed foods.
Yeah.
Can we agree on
This,
that?
yeah, I agree.
Okay.
The
Okay.
inflammatory fats that,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll discuss more in the next episode and look forward to talking to you then. Thanks for listening. Now go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. You can join us on the journey and roadmap to remission.